Hi, welcome back to Mysteries channel. Thanks for clicking on my video and yeah, let's just get to it. This is Peking Man, a very interesting fellow. Actually, not a fellow, more a community. This community was seen as the link that had been missing in our past, the link between man and ape. This story involves royals, governments, and intelligence communities. It all started with a tooth in 1923 and ended in disaster and loss. These fossils and the legacy of Peking Man have an interesting story, so let's just go over it. Paleontologists were directed to a site named Dragon Bone Hill. Local quarrymen recognized deposits of quartz that were not native to the area. Immediately, paleontologists realized that primitive man must have been responsible for this, and the search began. I brought up a tooth. Yeah, the tooth turns into a dig that digs up around 47 people. Men, women, and children. This is one of the greatest discoveries in anthropology and possibly the human record. Some believe that it upends the narrative that humanity begins in Africa. Many in China believe humanity evolved separately in different parts of the world around the same time because of this discovery, in fact. Peking Man was culturally seen as an answer to the questions of the world. It was a source of pride, bringing worldwide attention to the area, and everyone knew and was talking about it. Everybody wanted to be a part of this dig. The Crown Prince of Sweden gives it a royal status and everyone wants to be involved in the discovery made in China. America funds this excavation, wanting indeed to see what yields it would find. A set of 200 Homo erectus fossils that were excavated from China's Shikoodian Cave from 1929 to 1937 are known as Peking Man. The Shikoodian Caves are near Beijing, which was once known as Peking. You say Istanbul, I say Constantinople kind of thing. The fossils recovered had nearly 6 complete skull caps, several partial skulls, 11 mandibles, teeth, and some skeletal bones. These fossils dated to between 500,000 and 750,000 years ago. Also, in the cave system, numerous stone tools and clues to their way of life. This community used fire, worked with wood, and wore clothing. In fact, they were meticulous about clothing. They also drilled holes into the objects for reasons completely unknown and mysterious. It is known, though, that they cooked their meat, and they were very fond of deer meat. Other questions arose as there were strange markings on the bones, suggesting perhaps cannibalism was involved, although others also decree that possibly hyenas overtook the area afterwards, leaving those marks. But you'll see why, we just don't know. Peking Man was sophisticated, and he was capable of intellectual thought. Peking Man's cranial capacity approaches 1,300 cubic centimeters, nearly the same size as modern humans. The skull was flat in profile with a small forehead, very thick bones, very heavy brow ridges, and a large chinless jaw. Peking Man had a human face that had a brow that jutted forward, basically a recessed jaw. The teeth found were essentially identical to modern human teeth, except that canines and molars were larger than ours. His limb bones are indistinguishable from ours. And while this dig is going on, there's a man in the background. This man's name is Davidson Black, and he is dedicating every waking moment to researching every aspect of the fossils that come out of this dig. Mr. Black secures funding from the Rockefeller Foundation, and excavation begins with both Western and Eastern scientists under the supervision of Chinese archaeologists. Mr. Black publishes his findings in Nature Journal and sends casts of fossils to universities requesting them. Mr. Black is ill, but he is convicted to uncovering any and all information on these fossils. Unfortunately, he dies suddenly, but luckily those casts were sent out. Why? Because they're gone. All of it. Peking Man, the community, all of it was lost, missing, and no one knows how, where, or why. After Mr. Black's death, Professor Zhao Lumpur becomes the head of the investigation into the community known as Peking Man. He is a national hero, and this is a defining period of his life. The fossils were human, like Neanderthal, in the fact that they are ancient and like us, but not quite like us. And on top of it, it's a crazy point in time, a time of uncertainty, a time of war, and no one can foresee the shit show that's about to ensue. World War II is blazing, and Chinese officials are worried that the occupiers, Japan, will steal this gift upon humanity and convince American diplomats to smuggle the fossils out of the country. And this is with good reason. The Japanese government knows of the fossils. The entire world is talking about this, and they set forth to bring them back to their emperor in Japan. A squad of Japanese intelligence officials is assembled with the express mission of finding and acquiring Peking Man. Immediately, Chinese officials begin interrogating the staff of Peking University. Many flee the occupation to other parts of the country, while Japanese agents begin their search. Mr. Hu is at the very top of their list, but he's gone as well. Mr. Hu was a part of the excavation from the very beginning. He is also a man who understands that they are in danger. Mr. Hu watches 2 wooden crates carefully and meticulously packed with Peking Man's remains. They are layered with linen and paper to ensure that they survive the voyage to be taken. Once the fossils are safely packed, Mr. Hu leaves the area himself. He knows that not only are the fossils in danger, but he himself is in danger as well. He is the very last official noted to have seen them, and had he waited to watch the delivery into the American officials' hands, maybe the story would be different, but maybe not. Who knows? So now we ponder, where did they go? Are they in a rich villain's private collection? Did they make it out of the country? For a while, many in China thought maybe the Japanese did intercept them. It was an occupation, and a brutal one at that. Anything of value was sought, and if the Japanese soldiers spied the carefully packed wooden crates, they would have immediately understood that what was packed was precious. Were they buried in China because someone thought better of removing them from the country? Or did a museum get involved? Perhaps a museum that has a history of losing skeletal remains. We just don't know. Here are some of the theories that have been put out there. 1, they may possibly be hidden in the US, Japan, or Taiwan. 2, they were placed on a train that was detained by the Japanese. When this happened, the crates are discarded from the train in an attempt to save the fossils, only to be collected later by locals who believe that they are dragon bones and use them in medicine. I mean, this is one a book was written about, but to me, it's a freaking stretch. Like, why dragon bones? You know what I mean? I don't know. 3, they are at the bottom of the ocean, sinking with the Aomara, a Japanese steamer sunk during the war. 4, they are buried beneath what is now a parking lot for a Chinese mall. At the last moment, officials feared they would be found and buried them in China, only to die during the war, keeping the secrets within them. I mean, truly, we just don't know. But here is something crazy that happened on our side that maybe lends to they came to America. An American woman in New York claimed to have them and attempted to sell them. She presented a picture and met the buyer at the top of the Empire State Building. She then gets spooked and disappears, never being heard from again. But assured and ascertained during the attempted sale that these were Peking Man's bones, her husband had brought them over, and that she was 100% sure they were worth an enormous amount of money. So that's really all that, these are all the hypotheses out there, and nobody knows. They just disappeared. They're like literally someone sees them and then bam, they're gone. Magic trick. And the most jacked up part about this missing community of bones is that in China, ancestors are of foremost importance. So even if you take the anthropological component out of this, one of the greatest discoveries of human origin to date, you have to consider that their ancestors have been lost. Remember, the video I did about Kennewick Man, the Native American community wanted their ancestor, their ancient one, back to give him the burial he deserved. Well, I'm sure this is quite the same in China. They want the remains back to give him the proper rights reserved for ancestors. Anything I look up, I kind of back check it against anything I can find in the CIA. And I also looked in the FBI, but I couldn't find the FBI files, even though I know that they were on the case of the woman in New York. I found a Sun Street file. This was a file. In fact, I'll just read it to you really quick. Like usual, anymore. I always go on to the CIA database to see if I can find anything that they have on anything. This is probably the closest thing I could find. It is, again, a Stargate session, and well, this is what it says. Session summary. The target was involved with the Earth's crust in some fashion. There was an old smell, a smell of decay that is natural and organic, and a sharp, stinging smell. There is evidence of water, i.e. erosion, but water may not be present now. There is an oldness, ancient, and primitiveness associated with the target. It is a male whose work was related to dirt, soil, and something buried. The man has a stubby beard and looks like Charlton Heston with a beard. There are waterfalls nearby. The target is flashy, flamboyant, has an association with alcohol, and always appears bored in public. His appearance is reminiscent of an intellectual, a learned professor type, and eccentric, and is considered one of the old boys in his discipline of study. He is associated with hard bones, skeletons, or bones, which are very hard, reminiscent of fossils, tools, and something buried. This individual spent a great deal of his working time outdoors in a sandy, rocky area, which is inhospitable, savanna-like features. He leads a group of people when he is working. There is a concept of digging or excavating for something, as well as collecting objects. The work has to do with the ground, reminiscent of geology. All of the hardships of the work and the surrounding environment made it all that more enjoyable for this individual. There are wrapped boxes and objects which are displayed elsewhere. All over, the concept of hard fossils is apparent. The phonetics, luntil, lanil, and lianil, were perceived. And then it just goes into the notes. I can't even read any of the dang handwriting. Like, all of these people probably should have been doctors. I think it says cone-shaped object with a forced project. I really can't tell. I think it says something about energy, but I really have no idea. But I did find it interesting that this paper is talking about fossils. And, well, when I look up any of these different phonetics, I really can't find anything. I've tried putting it into translators, but the translators are looking for, the ones that I use online look for words to translate to another word, and I couldn't do it in any way phonetically. So if anyone can tell me what they think that these phonetics mean, or what they possibly mean, please put it below. I really don't know if this document has anything to do with Peking Man, but because it had to do with fossils and digging up of things, I had to take a look. That's all I really have for today. Tell me what you think. Have yourselves a great day, and please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.